Hi there, we're back for part two of basal body temperature charting. Thanks for coming back. And so this time we're going to talk about what can go wrong, so to speak, in a chart. We'll talk about those patterns and look at some examples. So for a quick reminder, let's look at an ideal chart. Here's a normal, super typical chart that is healthy looking. So the first 14 days we have a temperature of about 97.5, and then it's going up to, between 98 or a little more for the next 14 days. You can see it looks really pretty stable and easy to see a pattern. So let's open up another document to get a sense of what can go wrong with a chart. So we're not going to talk about all this, but the beginning of this document that you'll get talks a little bit more about cervical mucus and the types. It's super interesting stuff, and you can have that to explain to your clients. This is interesting here. The egg is only able to be fertilized for 6 to 12 hours after being released. So I think some sources say even less than that. So it's a pretty small window, but because sperm can live for at the most 5 days, then it kind of makes the window a little bigger, so to speak, if the sperm are already in there. So some studies say that the best timing for having sex is 48 hours before ovulation. So again, relying only on a chart, basal body temperature chart, may make you miss your ovulatory window. So doing an ovulation test is really best. And we talk here about some things that can affect cervical mucus, like birth control pills or allergy medications. That's a common one. Antidepressants, Clomid treatment. And there's some things here to create like a healthier environment in your vagina and how to feel for the cervix. And now we get into the main event here, phases of the cycle. So first 14 or so days of the cycle is called the follicular phase. Temperature range average should be about 97.5. It could be from 97.1 to 97.7. And you don't want too much fluctuation. The most you want fluctuation is a half of a degree. So that means, one day it could be 97.2, the next day 97.7, but that's enough range. And frankly, I rarely see things that being close to 97.7. I do tend to see them being like a little lower. However, if you go too low, if you're below 97, then we suspect a low metabolic rate and really a low thyroid activity. I think that's really common. It doesn't necessarily mean that they have Hashimoto's or a severe thyroid disease, but I would recommend in these cases getting the thyroid checked, getting a full thyroid panel, and even just supplementing on things like 500 micrograms of iodine a day, getting a little selenium, making sure they're not eating a lot of bread or having chlorinated water, or you maybe even avoiding fluoride treatments if they're doing any fluoride orally. Just kind of suspect the thyroid, so to speak, if you see low temperatures there. So what if the follicular phase is long? So it's not 14 days, it's 20 days. Well, some sources say that a long follicular phase can be normal. I think you can still get pregnant on a long follicular phase, but it's still not ideal. We would say in Chinese medicine, the blood is deficient. I would say also, the estrogen is probably often low in a long follicular phase. The estrogen isn't strong enough to signal the brain that an egg is ready to be released. So that's one way to look at it. You could also kind of think about the brain as maybe not signaling the ovaries to produce enough. Could also be a PCOS case where the follicles aren't kind of developing in a normal, healthy way. There are multiple follicles sending out different messages, and there's just no dominant follicle being developed. So, lots of different potential cases and situations there, and you really just have to look at your client's full picture to get some more clues. Okay, what if it's a short follicular phase, only like 9 or 10 days? Um, they're saying here to look for signs of infection. I wouldn't. I mean, I wrote this. I guess I'm saying that. I guess that's what I've researched and read. I wouldn't always say it's infection. I've definitely seen it with endometriosis. Um, I think that there's maybe just like a higher amount of circulating estrogen, so the body signals it's ready to ovulate, but it really may not be ready to ovulate. Um, and you could be releasing an immature egg. So it's important to look at this. Again, I've had some clients say, "Well, I definitely got pregnant on a short follicular phase." Maybe, maybe it is normal, so to speak, but I wouldn't say it's ideal. What if the temperature is very high, like it's 98 or something like that? That could be hyperthyroid, and it could be an acidic environment. Um, let's see. I don't really see this much, to be honest. I think it can be a bit high also when there's PCOS, when there's just like extra hormones kind of floating around um, in the first phase of the cycle that shouldn't be there. There's kind of conflicting messages going on with maybe some undeveloped follicles. What if it's just high at the start of the follicular phase? Yeah, again, this could be endometriosis or just some kind of irregularity with the ovary that the hormonal messages are off. Um, maybe yeah, something about the signaling is off. So I would look for some underlying sources of endometriosis or PCOS. And I think it could mean that just the body isn't clearing hormones very well. Maybe the person is obese, or maybe the person just has low liver function and they're not clearing hormones, so they're still circulating and giving some signals out. What if the temperatures are very unstable? Um, this is a common complaint of clients to feel like things are too unstable. So a fever, not getting enough sleep, drinking alcohol may make those temperatures look high. Um, if the client's saying, no, no, I'm not doing any of those things, sometimes they're getting up at night like for other children, or they're very stressed out. Maybe they're just stressed about getting pregnant. And it's creating this fluctuation in their state, so to speak, probably not getting a good night's sleep. So it's something to treat and ask about their blood sugar. Ask about their sleeping situation, if they're taking their temperature at the same time every day. Some people ask me, well, what if my dog's in my bed or something like that? I don't think it's a big deal. Like if your dog's in your bed, especially if it's every night you have the same dog in the bed, then your temperature should reflect something steady going on there. So I don't really worry that much about dog in the bed situation. Okay, now we're moving on to ovulation time. Ideally, day 14. There may be a dip in the temperature. I think I mentioned this on the last video. Um, Oh, here's why, because the enlarged follicle produces a large quantity of estrogen, but that surge only lasts 12 hours, so you may not catch that dip. And then we want to see that nice rise in temperature, ideally pretty quickly. Um, so once you rise and you stay risen for a couple days, your fertile window is over. There's not much sense in trying to conceive. If you're trying not to conceive after your temperature goes high for a few days, it's probably safe to not use birth control after that. Sometimes I see this raise slowly. We're probably going to talk about this in a minute. Okay, so now we're into the luteal phase, the second half of your cycle. Should be at least 11 days, but ideally like 13 or 14 days. You really shouldn't see a lot of variation in this phase. 0.2 variation, that's not very much variation. Um, so that temperature should stay nice and high and strong at 98ish. That's important for maintaining pregnancy, and it's a sign of strong estrogen. Also can be a strong sign of thyroid activity. There's a relationship between thyroid and progesterone. So after let's see, after you ovulate, the corpus luteum is making that estrogen. If conception occurs, the corpus luteum will really kick into high gear and keep producing high amounts of progesterone. If conception does not occur, that corpus luteum will just basically like disintegrate. So what could we see go wrong in this luteal phase? You could see the temperatures rising too slowly. If it takes more than 3 days for your temperature to rise at least 0.6, then the body is not reacting to progesterone in circulation quickly. I think your body either is not reacting quickly to progesterone or you're not producing enough. I think that could be either one. So there's could be a few things here I listed, but I would say mostly it's probably low progesterone or some kind of progesterone receptor issue. Luteal phase being too short. If it's really short, then you may not have ovulated at all. So, if your cycle is only like 20 days or, you think you ovulated, you saw a shift, but then you just bled, you may not have ovulated. What if it's a little bit longer, 5 or 6 days, then corpus luteum may have not been very strong and disintegrated. It wasn't a very strong, healthy ovulation, so it didn't support this luteal phase. If the luteal phase is longer, like 8 or 10 days, then that's better. Your corpus luteum is doing something, but it's not a strong luteal phase. Implantation would have just barely occurred, and now the cycle's fallen apart. So you really need it to keep going, at least 10 or 11 to 12 days being nice and strong and temperature staying high. So yeah, even if it's like 11 days and you start spotting, still progesterone has declined too early. And this is really common. So if you're having, a lot of PMS and spotting and your temperatures aren't strong, then we can suspect a luteal phase defect based on progesterone low output. Is probably what's happening. Here's some similar things. What if your luteal phase temperatures are just too low? You didn't have a strong shift. You have to rebuild the entire cycle. I think there's an overemphasis on just fixing the luteal phase. And really, the follicular phase builds the luteal phase. You can't just ignore that. You have to fix the whole thing. You have to get, circulation going to those organs. You have to have good nutrition and be working on inflammation. You have to look for underlying causes like thyroid or, blood sugar, you gotta look at stress, all sorts of things. So we can't oversimplify this treatment. What if your luteal phase is unstable? This is very common. You may see the temperatures going up and down, or also just sinking in the middle. I think we're going to talk about that one in the middle, but this up and down is what we're talking about here. Could be, again, stress and anxiety. Could just be like kind of weak progesterone. I would say it's more stress and anxiety. What if it's very high? Then Chinese medicine, we would say that's like a heat pattern, and maybe there is some kind of infection in the body, or could be endometriosis. Another pattern is what they call a saddle pattern, where maybe the temperature comes up, but then it dips back down like a seat and then raises up again. This will usually occur a week after ovulation, they're saying. So it could be a surge of estrogen / a drop in progesterone. There's an imbalance here. The estrogen should be dropping and the progesterone should be nice and strong. So either the progesterone was weak, which is probably likely, or perhaps you didn't detoxify estrogen very well and it's still surging, or you got some exogenous source of estrogen making an imbalance there. So probably, again, that person needs stronger ovulation and stronger progesterone, and maybe consider clearing out excess estrogen sources, improving elimination of toxins in the body. What if your luteal phase is longer than 14 days? This is pretty much always because you're pregnant. There's no such thing as like a normal 18-day luteal phase. So congratulations. If you're seeing an 18-day, you should probably test and do a pregnancy test. Your temperatures should be staying high. I guess occasionally, you could have some bleeding, but you would see that your temperatures are still high. It can be that, you do see your temperatures stay high, maybe 16, 18 days, and then your period comes. This could be an early miscarriage or a chemical pregnancy. These are somewhat common with a first pregnancy, and it also, could be common with older moms, older couples trying to become pregnant. With a sperm quality issue, you can have these early miscarriages, or just basically an issue of the egg not able to reproduce. It wasn't viable, and there's a miscarriage. Another situation is a cyst. Bear with me here. A cyst on the corpus luteum is causing continued high temperature. I don't think that's super common, but I guess good to note that that's possible. Let's see here. So vaginal testing could be used if your client feels the temperatures are too erratic. I have never exactly recommended that. Let's see. So your temperatures can raise quite a bit over time. So if say on the weekends that you sleep in an extra 2 hours, great, go ahead and do so. But you may want to add in a little extra temperature on the weekends to make up for that. Like, let's say it was the weekday and you just had, a 98 and a 98. Then maybe you woke up on the weekend later and now it's at 98.2. I think you could potentially just go ahead and record a 98, if that makes sense. So if you get hotter as time goes by, you can adjust. Or let's say you have to get up early some day for some event. You get up 2 hours earlier than normal, and maybe you see that your temperature is colder than normal. You could potentially go self-adjust it and put it put it a little bit warmer, like 0.2 warmer if it's 2 hours difference. Or you can just make a note on your BBT, hey, I got up early that day, or I slept in that day, as a little bit of understanding why things may have looked a little different. Okay, so this is a lot to take in at once, but you can always go back to your document. And now we're going to look at some other documents. Hi. Look at some more documents, some case studies. These are real case studies from a fertility class group we had. And you'll have these to look at too for later. Little bit of information. Now, of course, these people in this group were all struggling to get pregnant. So these aren't the easiest, charts. If you ask somebody who had a real healthy cycle, it probably wouldn't look like this. So this person was 37 years old, came off birth control after 15 years. She had been diagnosed with PCOS those 15 years ago. She actually had sent me 3 charts. So we'll kind of take a quick look at all of them. So I'm going to have you look at this yourself and tell me, or tell yourself what you think of it. What are you noticing? What do you notice about the luteal phase? So you can see by these red dot lines, those are called the cover lines, that they calculated that this person ovulated on day 25. So I'm sorry, I'm not going to remember the exact quote, but you calculate the cover line something about like 5 temperatures that are below the average last 5 temperatures. I'm sorry, I don't remember the exact formula, but once you have some temperatures that are sustained to be at a higher level, then they say, well, that's the cover line. That's when you had your thermal shift, and that's when you probably ovulated. So you can see here that, day 25, she had a long follicular phase, right? She also had some instability. She had more than that 0.5 degree of variation. She looked really nice and stable in the beginning at 97.8, which frankly is a bit high. She did have a history long ago of PCOS. And then she had some really high days, and then she dropped down a whole bunch. And then it looks like she ovulated. And now we can see the second phase of her cycle was about 14 days, so that's good. But it wasn't very stable, was it? So her luteal phase was not very stable. She almost dropped down below the cover line, which we never want to see. We never want to see her drop down to where she started. And again, got a pretty high temp on there, so it's a little some stuff unusual there. And we can look at her next chart. Was a little bit similar, unstable in the beginning, then had a late ovulation. Then her luteal phase was short and unstable. You can see here she took her ovulation test. You see on the bottom, day 21, she had a positive test. And then it looks like she did indeed ovulate a couple of days later, so that was helpful. And she was having sex at the right times, right around that window, so that's good. She made a few notes about her cervical mucus there. Well, let's see that. I guess those are her only 2. So, yeah, what can we say about this chart? We'd say both phases need to be worked on. Definitely the stability needs to be worked on. I'd be questioning her about, late nights or stress or alcohol for sure. Make sure there's nothing going on there. With her history of PCOS, even though it was a long time ago, I really like the idea of doing cleanses for PCOS and obviously getting the blood sugar stable. So you have to correlate what you see here on the charts with what the client, excuse me, is telling you. It looks to me like she kind of has some heat, as we'd say in Chinese medicine, like she had some kind of hotness flare up every now and then, which is something to be suspicious of. Okay, next we have another case. She's a 29-year-old, short but regular cycle, but painful periods, a little bit of spotting. She said she suspects endometriosis. She did her, I don't know what program she used for this little graph, but you can see her beginning of her cycle is looking pretty nice, around 97.5, not too much variation. Did seem like she had, whoops, a little bit of a weird peak right before her mid-cycle. I don't know what day. Let's see, 1, 2, 3. That was like day 13. It looks to me like she ovulated around day 17, maybe. Then she stays up higher. We don't have that information, but her temperature goes up pretty good. It's a little bit too variable, I think we could say, and maybe a little short in that second phase of the cycle. But not a horrible chart at all. I think someone could potentially be pregnant from this chart, but we can clean up a few things about maybe stabilizing that second phase of the cycle. Let's see, what did she say? Some painful periods. She said they're short. This one doesn't look that short. Maybe she means the flow was short. Yeah, it might mean that she needs to boost her estrogen levels. Painful periods are often just inflammation and lack of magnesium. So it depends how painful it is and how long it lasts, that kind of thing. All right, next case is a 29-year-old who was diagnosed with PCOS. She has a paper chart here that she just wrote in on, and so we can't see quite as well, but looks like this is like a 20, no, let's see. This cycle is like 32 days. She didn't take her temperatures in the beginning when she was having her period. You can see here that she's basically hovering, around 97.5. Basically, I don't think she ovulated. There's no thermal shift here. So she bled at the end of the month. There was enough fluctuation that she did end up bleeding, but I don't think she ovulated. This is something pretty cool about basal body temperature charting, is you can basically see, like, hey, I don't really see that you ovulated here. So that's what we need to work on. We need to work on getting you ovulating. Next one here, let's see. She says she takes her temperature very early, so she wonders if that makes it lower. Again, a bit of a long luteal follicular phase, excuse me here. Again, she's got a few high temperatures. I think she said she had some injuries and some stuff going on. Then she definitely had a short luteal phase, only about 9 days or 8 days. Little bit of instability in both sections. She did have a positive ovulation on day 20. She had some egg white cervical mucus that she noticed. So, yeah, again, even someone could potentially maybe get pregnant on this chart. She obviously didn't. Maybe her luteal phase wasn't strong enough. There's lots of reasons, right? Here's another one of her months. A little similar. Ovulated a little sooner. Again, too much variation in that second phase of the cycle. She noted some nights that she was sleep deprived. Oh, that's interesting. So she had some sleep deprived nights, or some drinking nights, and it made her temperature warmer. So look at how that correlates there. Yeah, you need a good night's sleep to kind of really sink into that low temperature, like deep mode. This is the same person. You can see that they didn't even make a cover line for her on this one. Seems like she probably might have ovulated around day, 20-ish, but there's no cover line here. Again, look at, she's so predictable. Whenever she drinks, it goes up pretty much. Um, this is the same client again. She had a better looking month this month. I think this was an earlier month, but she ovulated sooner, looking a lot more stable the second half of the cycle. So this was a bit better month, but a short luteal phase again. I think this is still the same person. This is, wow, look at all this variation. She said she wasn't using progesterone cream here. I guess she was later. This is a much earlier cycle. And yeah, all over the board here. Somebody like this, I say, you need to do a cleanse, you need to watch your stress, you need to get to bed all the time on a timely fashion, you need to get off the alcohol. I don't think this would be much of a chart to see on someone who had really good self-care. Or maybe this person has some really severe, like undiagnosed endometriosis or something. Maybe she's really toxic. Okay, here's another one. This looks a little weird because it's on two charts. Looks like she ovulated day 21. This looks kind of weird because it's cut together, but I think this is two different. Actually, this is two different ones. So she had first a long follicular phase, short luteal phase, and she was moving into the next month, and we were looking at that as being, yeah, this little second section is month 2. This isn't really easy to look at, but again, she had another short, unstable luteal phase. Yeah, so I hope this gives you some idea. I know that these can be a little tricky to look at. You're seeing so much up and down and what's going on. I think this particular group of people had a lot of up and down, but I would say, let's go back here. And that might be something you see a lot, which isn't too bad, but a little few things to clean up. Let's see. This woman who did the paper chart, this is something I maybe see a lot, is no ovulation. I definitely often see very low temperatures, which we didn't see too much on here, but I just saw that today with a client, and I talked to her about her thyroid. Maybe we need to check it out. And again, you need to go back to your notes and say, okay, this is a short luteal phase. What might that mean? I see, a sawtooth pattern. What does that mean? Go back and check and integrate it with what you know about your client and what you know about cycle health. And, just go back to your books and study. Perhaps get the book that I mentioned earlier in the last video. Hi. So yeah, it takes a little while to get a hang of these and to know what to do with these. But I think that it will help you, especially if the client does it for a few months and you start to see some patterns. If the client is really stressing out about it, you don't have to keep doing it. You could say, hey, why don't we do treatment and take a break from charting for a few months and then try again. So there's different approaches and ways to use this, but I do find it to be a very helpful tool, practically free, and would encourage you to give it a try. It just takes a little practice to get used to it, and then after looking at 12 cases or so, you'll feel really a lot more confident. All right, thanks everyone. Again, I'm Bridget Danner. My website is bridgetdanner.com, and I would love to stay in touch with you. I have a Facebook account, Bridget Danner LAC, and a Twitter account, and I have a podcast and a blog, and would love to stay in service to you. And good luck. Thanks.